From CRI Simple Numbers, this is Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast, a podcast for those championing market growth and anchoring the nation's economy, small businesses, and entrepreneurs.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Simple Numbers Profitability Playbook Podcast. I'm Mike Maxon. That's Brandon Gray.
Okay.
You have a good weekend?
Yeah, it was a different weekend. So I think a lot of folks know my side hustles. I work with athletic programs on mindset, mental toughness, culture, teamwork, those kind of things, and volunteer at one of our local high schools. And so we had the annual Sleep in the Field House night on Friday night. So imagine 70 high school football players and the coaching staff all spending the night at the field house. So the kids really liked it. I mean, it was great, and some really good team stuff to do, and everybody get, to know each other better and build some trust and strengthen some relationships and not sleep much. So we had practice the next morning at 6:30, and as you can imagine, we had some guys grabbing.
Oh, yeah, they can't help it. I couldn't go to sleep around a crew like that.
I think I got about an hour, maybe 2 hours sleep.
Yeah.
What did you have going on this weekend?
My daughter went and it was her first ECNL soccer tournament. So she's up in that upper echelon of soccer now. And so she had her first tournament. They won. She led the team in goals this weekend and,
Nice.
Did good. So it was fun. Just had to spend some time in Atlanta for it.
For those that don't know, Maxon's girls are absolute ballers on the soccer field. I mean, they're legit. So
I have the receipts to show how to get them there too. They work hard, but man, youth sports today is totally different. We could probably spend a whole podcast on that. When I was younger, you just had to play. Now it's insane what you got to do.
Crazy. I can remember, the Little League coach would come by before practice. You'd hop in the back of his truck with that green Army duffel bag, that team equipment in it, and we'd head off to practice. It was,
We're just standard across the U.S., by the way. Every kid, so you grew up in the South. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania, and you had the green duffel bag.
Oh, that was standard for Little League.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, everybody, we're going to talk some operating expenses. So if you listened to us last week, we talked about fixed assets, and things, those purchases that you might want to use to grow the company, grow your operations, and their importance. Well, there's another spend too that I wanted to continue on, and that is your operating expenses. And so real quick recap, in Simple Numbers world, we have that business engine we talk about, which is your revenue less your non-labor COGS, get you your gross margin minus your direct labor, gets you your contribution margin, and that's the engine. Well, the other part is that business chassis. And we've talked about this before, but we keep getting it brought up of, hey, how much should I spend on X? And well, that X we're talking about in the chassis is your facilities, your marketing, your management labor, your payroll, tax and benefits, and then a catch-all bucket of other operating expenses. And so it is not uncommon, and Brandon, I'm sure you get this too. Hey, how much should I be spending on my rent? Hey, how much should I be spending on marketing? Hey, what did people typically spend overall in their total OPEX for a growing business? Should I be spending 50% of my revenue? These are all the things that we want to discuss today and go over it. So, Brandon, I don't know how you want to start, but I was going to start with an example and let you fill in on it.
Yeah, well, I think as you kind of set the table, there's a couple things to keep in mind. And so, the goal becomes, and we had Professor Dad Allen on to talk about scaling versus growing your business. The goal becomes to scale operating expenses. So if you guys didn't listen to that podcast, I think it was in April or May, go back and check that out because he did a phenomenal job of discussing the difference. But the quick version is, if I'm when I'm in growing business versus a scaling business. With a growing business, my operating expenses continue to grow at the same rate that my margin dollars grow. So kind of think about it this way. Total OPEX percent of margin, let's just say if that was 30%, and I grow, it stays 30%. The two just run parallel to each other. versus a scaling business. They might have been 30, but as I grow my gross margin, they go down to 28, 27, 26. So I'm not having to spend proportionally the same amount on OPEX as I grow margin dollars. So that's the goal. So as we kind of discuss this and give out some general guidelines, you got to kind of look at it too of, am I in a position to scale OPEX, or am I still trying to achieve enough gross margin to make that happen? So kind of keep that in mind. Secondly, we're going to give some general indicators, you might say, what we see in the 100 company model. I'm going to try to speak as we go through some of the details about a little bit more specifically around some certain industries, because, you take a consulting business, for example, kind of like us. Well, we might have one spend for facilities. A home services company that has a bunch of vehicles may have an entirely different spend for facilities. Same thing with marketing. One type of business, maybe you're a wholesaler or a contractor, and you don't, marketing's predominantly relationship driven. You're going to have one type of one volume of spend for marketing versus if I'm an attorney, or if I'm an online retailer, I'm going to have an entirely different spend for marketing. So there's going to, as we kind of throw these out there, keep that in mind. They're general numbers of what we see in the 100 company model. So don't, if you got a question, call us or email us specifically about your industry. Don't get married to, marketing for me is 15%. That's way too high. Well, it may be perfect given the type of business you have. So.
Yeah, great. So let's start off with just this right here. And this is we'll just hit the big one first. Brandon, Mike, that operating expenses that you talked about, that includes those 5 buckets. Just what do you typically see, just where someone would be spending as the total maybe of my revenue in that area?
Yeah. So as you set the, kind of the table for that conversation, there is a certain amount you're going to have to spend. Now, keep in mind, what we're going to focus on, first of all, is going to be the business engine, making sure we're getting the most margin, we're getting the most labor efficiency, okay? So those are your bigger levers 9 times out of 10. But once you kind of get up and going and you go, hey, I'm running a profitable business, I'm hitting peaks of labor efficiency, then, to some degree, it becomes math. And here's what I mean by that. If you look at it and you go, okay, I want a 15%, let's round it up. Let's go 20. I want a 20% profit to gross margin. Okay. And I look then at my contribution margin, which, keep in mind, is going to be after your direct cost and your direct labor costs are accounted for. Right. And let's say that I'm running at a 30% of margin from that standpoint. Well, I want 20, I've got 30, so that's 50. That only leaves me 50% left that can fall in that bucket. All right. So you kind of can back into what the math is going to allow you to have there. In general, back to the 100 company model, here's what we're seeing right now. It's somewhere total OPEX. So that's going to be facilities, marketing, admin, management, labor, tax and benefits, and then the other OPEX. They're running 28, 29, maybe 30% of top line revenue. So somewhere in that neighborhood, 1 or 2% difference, once again, depending upon the type of business that you have. But that'll give you a rough idea of what that total bucket should start to look like in a lot of cases.
Yeah, great answer. I'll take that from another angle. So I'm just going to use my experience just with my client base and over the years to make it simple for some people. Typically, my best in class clients, and this is, again, a blanket statement that obviously you can take this a few different ways. But for the most part, when they're humming at a good operating level of just scale, you're seeing it flutter between 30 and 35% of your OPEX to revenue. When I see a business maybe hit the gas to invest for growth, I see it range into that 35 to 40% range where, hey, we've added some expenses, we've invested maybe in some management labor, we got a little bit bigger of a facility, we stepped up some marketing. I then have the ones that plus up over 40%. And what I've seen is is while some businesses can operate on that, that begins to become a very heavy weight without the scale. And so if someone hits into the 40s of their percent of OPEX to revenue, I would expect it to eventually come to a hold soon and it fall back down into one of those ranges as they grow. When they continuously operate at 40, the engine has a very difficult time pulling along that chassis for substantial profit growth. That's a general statement. Again, I have some clients that have no overhead. It's a virtual company. So that'll be totally different. But I'm talking about your standard small business with a place to have people show up at and things like that. It's going to operate between that range. But keep in mind, if you see yourself above that 40% range and you're not scaling and bringing it down, you'll begin to feel the profit pressure there, unless you're able to generate enough at the top.
You don't want your chassis to be too heavy. And that's the other thing of it. You look at your OPEX, what is discretionary versus necessary? And that's a gray line in some cases. But a lot of times, especially if businesses are doing well, you see creep occur. We'll start to spend a little bit more here and there along the way in certain areas. Maybe we don't have the same control we once had. We're not as concerned about it, and they'll creep up a few points.
Brandon, what about a business that this comment came up, and I actually posed it to you guys because they're a massively growing business. Scaling is actually the word for it. And this is what we get a lot on the facility side. So I talked about overall spend, but now let's drill into a little bit of some of the buckets because I know Brandon has some great insight here. So in facilities, a common question I get, hey, I'm growing. Business is great. I got to find another place to house the labor I've been adding because we're out of space. Problem is, Mike, how much space should I get? Because what if we go get the space and I keep growing and I got to go get another space and they want me to sign these leases? And, should I buy a building and then add on or lease it? But stick at it from the OPEX side, Brandon, how would you approach that with a business who's looking at growing and they're running into, hey, what if I outgrow my next space too quickly?
Yeah. It's all about the lease agreement. So, and once again, it kind of depends on the type of space that you're needing. So if you're just needing general office space, in most markets, that's not a challenge right now. Since COVID and more folks started working remotely and occupancy rates went down pretty substantially, you can find space. And a lot of times you can get some flexibility with lease. The technique that many times, and this isn't rocket science, but that works really well is to sign a lease and then have an option or a first right of refusal on adjoining space. So we had one of our clients, I think about 2 years ago, they were same kind of situation. They're growing, people on top of each other. They move into a building. And so they had, the space available was like half of a floor. And then when they signed the lease, they had first right of refusal on the next block, which was the second part of that floor. So if the landlord came to them in 6 months and said, hey, I got somebody really interested, they had the option to first exercise that to then go ahead and get the space. And so they created some flexibility in the lease agreement. Obviously, you're looking to get as short of a term as possible. They're looking to get as long of a term as possible from the landlord's perspective. So you gotta kind of negotiate as far as that part is concerned. But that being said, that's usually kind of the best way to look at it. When it comes to should I buy a building, we're kind of to some degree agnostic, but we're cautious because of the reason that Mike mentioned a moment ago. Things can change. And so if I'm going to buy the building, I change hats. I go, I'm going to be a real estate investor, regardless as to if my business is the client of the property or if someone else is renting it. I'm happy with that. I don't ever want to go into it with I'm the only one unless, and there's a few very limited cases to where like a building supply company has to have the physical space, right? Or I've got something related to permitting in my company, in my operations, to where I got to have a very specific zoning. setting those aside, just normal kind of businesses. I want to make sure that I'm happy as a real estate investor, regardless of who's leasing the space. Because we got countless examples of folks who moved into a space and it was way too large and they wouldn't sublease it or couldn't sublease it. And now the business is not able to perform and hit profit target because their lease expense is too high. The growth slowed down, they didn't grow into it, and vice versa. We've seen cases to where someone really should relocate their office, but they don't because they own the building. It's like, I never want to hurt the business because I've decided to be a real estate investor. Now, if I'm agnostic and that looks good and I like reinvested back in my business and I'm cool with being a real estate investor, sure, take a look at it.
Awesome. Anything else on facilities you want to mention?
The Greg Crabtree quote, which is, don't fall in love with a facility because it will not love you back.
That's something to say.
I was at a conference one time and I got one of the best questions posed to me that I've had in a while. Someone asked, what mistakes do you see, common mistakes that entrepreneurs make? That's a good one. And one of them that I listed was they fall in love with a facility. And we want a comfortable and nice place for people to work. Don't get me wrong with that. But you can overspend in a heartbeat. And it can become super elaborate. It can become much larger than what you need. It can be very underutilized. And it's like, well, what type of return am I getting on having all this extra stuff?
Absolutely. All right, the next one.
One little thing there for the. We group anything that is building, vehicle, and IT related in those buckets. So if you have a fleet of vehicles, your facilities are going to be much more than someone else's, obviously speaking. But in general, 100 company model, that's running at about 5% of revenue. Once again, it's going to move. It could be 10% very easily, depending upon, what that looks like.
Yeah, great point. The next one is marketing. We've hit this one a lot, but let's just talk about it from a general spend perspective. We're not going to get into technique or anything like that. This is a big one because there's all kinds of debate. Brandon, I'm going to give you my generalization of what I see. A lot of my clients spend somewhere between 3 to 6% on marketing. Mm-hmm. The ones that are a little more online based, e-commerce based, sell on the web, like that is their main avenue, spend more than that, spend 10%, probably a little bit more. Obviously, we're talking about return. We know there's a return element here, everybody. We get that. Yeah. I'm just talking about general spend that when they come to us, they might be spending on. But most of my businesses sit somewhere between that 3 to 5, 3 to 6 range, in that ballpark for where they're typically at. If I see a business that is not online based, that is shifted over that 10%, I get cautious because I'm wondering on the return that they're getting. And so that's how I see it from a general perspective. Please enlighten us on 100 company model and what you see.
Yeah. So the makeup of that marketing bucket is going to be non-labor. So keep that in mind. We're not putting labor in here.
Right.
Secondly, it's going to involve everything from ad spend to brand, marketing consulting, travel for marketing events, conferences, networking, gifting, all those kind of things. The 100 company model is running right now pretty consistently about a 3% of top line. So pretty close to what Mike mentioned there. As we said earlier with facilities, same case with marketing. And I would add to what Mike said with agreeing in terms of if you're a high transaction business, meaning I'm in something like retail, or I got to market continually. Home services is another one that's heavy with marketing. I got to go out and I got to find a ton of homeowners every day to come and purchase the service. Some types of legal practices, personal injury, some of those kind of practices. You're going to see it north of 10. In a lot of cases, I'm seeing 15 becoming a little bit of a standard. And then a handful, 20%. So the cost of marketing is continuing to go up. The returns are going down in most cases. But you got to kind of look at it in terms of the type of the volume that I'm trying to attract. And then, what's it going to take from just a spend perspective to make that happen? But in general, if you're not in one of those categories, 3, 4, 5%, most of the time is sufficient.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly right. And remember, everybody, when outside of those percentages, continuously monitor that marketing return. That's one that can get out of hand real quick.
Yeah.
Even though you might be making profit, doesn't mean you're getting a return on that marketing. Because there is, you want to get more than what you're spending. So check out other podcast episodes for that one. The next one is the big one right now in the 100 company model. There's some revelation there with that one. Is that management labor bucket? This is your overhead spend. Everyone wants that overhead. The moment they sometimes get busy, the moment they want to grow, before ever leveraging it. And so there is no right way to say this one outside of using our labor efficiency concepts when it comes to our management labor. $3.50 for $3.50 of contribution margin per management labor dollar, up to $4.50 of management labor per contribution margin dollar, sub 10 million in revenue. That is a great gauge to see where you're at on your overhead in that range of your spend. That one is consistent across a lot of businesses. Mm-hmm. You'll see some people that really can leverage that overhead, and you do see it over time. But the reason why we wanted to keep it within that range is because for a small business, that's where you're going to hire that bookkeeper. Somewhere in there, you're going to hire the HR person. But once you get over 10 million, a lot of those spends calm down for a while. You don't need multiple bookkeepers. You don't need multiple HR people. Usually you can grow with one for quite a bit. Might get an admin in there somewhere to help. But for the most part, those positions scale a lot longer than a traditional, direct labor I got to produce. Right. And so that is your gauge on the spend with that bucket. Brandon, what say you?
Spot on. So as you cross over, you're starting in $7 to $10 million. We expect to see you exceeding that 450. So if you're a $20 million a year company and your gross margin's above 40, 50%, that number needs to be 550, 650, maybe 750. And this is the one that when you leverage it, it is a massive return in terms of profitability. So we can get a brand new client come in, and let's say they're 15 million in top line with an 80% gross margin. And if we look at their management LER and it's a 325, there's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to spot. Kind of like, what's everyone doing? Am I getting return on this? Or are they in their highest and best use?
Hey, let me tell you something. Brandon knows how to. So long time ago, man, 14, 15 years ago, it was crazy. When I got hired by Brandon and them, when I started at Crabtree Row and Burger, I get brought into this room by him and Greg, and they just have a list. And I still have it. I have it on right now. I have it in my files. I pull it up and show people every once in a while. Everyone, let me tell you something. I didn't know how to do 75% of this stuff on here. But you're like, look, we're going to need you to do this. And leveraging isn't even the word. I mean, I think right after everything was, I think I even took out the trash and hung pictures, in between all that. But leveraging wasn't the word. They used every bit of me to get the job done. But hey, we were small at the time. It was like, look, we're going to hire this position. We got something to do. It was something to do here. But I always tell people when they look to add that overhead labor, is everything beneficent? Have you evaluated the options, seen where, you could move some things around, maybe use fractional resources to keep that cost down, things like that. That'll help you leverage that overhead bucket. All right. So this is another fun one. I get this one a lot. Payroll taxes and benefits. Mm-hmm. Mike, am I spending too much on these benefits? And this is the one where, Brandon, you don't want to be a jerk, because it's people's benefits. Yeah. And you don't want to be the guy that's like, well, listen, man, are you giving out puppies or something like that? Because, emotional support puppies, because that's a really high payroll tax and benefits. I typically see one with standard benefits. Hey, we pay some health insurance, we get PTO, we do a 401k, 15%, ballpark
labor, total labor.
Yeah, my bad. Percentage of total labor. Man, I see that creeping above in the mid 20s. I'm concerned that the cost is so large that every time you add employees, it's difficult to then produce more to cover that burden on them at that rate.
So this bucket is going to have things like health insurance, short-term disability, retirement, vision, dental. It does not include paid time off or holidays. We keep that in labor. Okay. So keep that in mind. Like Mike said, we look at this percentage of total labor. 10 to 20 is the range. Okay. 15 is where most folks will find themselves. Now, here's what determines, there's a couple things that determine where you move in that range. So first of all, if the majority of your workforce falls on the lower end of the wage spectrum and you cover health insurance, it by default is going to be north of 15. You're going to run 18, 19, 20%. If you're paying somebody $15 an hour and you're covering half their health insurance, as a percentage, tax and benefits is obviously just going to be much higher. So that's what kind of many times drives that in terms of percentage. Like Mike said, about 15 is kind of the common one. Benefits are a recruiting and retention tool. Mm-hmm. And so when someone says, are my benefits too high? The first question I ask is, well, are you losing people because of benefits? No. Are you able to attract people because of your benefits? Okay, great. All right. Well, we passed the first test, and then we start to look at the percentage. Here's the one thing that we need to keep in mind. Health insurance is going to be the biggest driver. Health insurance rates are going up somewhere between 10 and 15% a year right now, and have consistently for the past few years. The preference for us as you're covering health insurance is to avoid tying yourself to a percentage of premium. Okay? I have no control over that premium. It may double. And if I'm paying half, I've automatically just doubled what I'm paying. Rather, what we recommend is to state a dollar amount of health insurance that you'll cover. So, hey, pick any plan you want, have as many people as you want on it. We pay for $500 a month, for example. And whatever you get above that, you come on out of pocket. The next year rolls around, if that premiums went up 20%, then I'm not tied to 20% increase. I can go, hey guys, we covered 500 last year. We're going to maybe do like 525 this year, but we have no control of where this premium's going. And so we like that approach as it gives you a little bit more control of the situation.
Excellent. All right, last one, the catch-all bucket of other OPEX. So real quickly, this is everything we haven't talked about. So subscriptions, QuickBooks, payroll fees,
non-marketing travel.
Yeah, stuff like that. That's just
consulting, professional fees, snacks and supplies.
You can put your liquor budget on there. It's fine. I had this guy, funny story. He calls up, he wanted to work with us. He goes, listen, don't you laugh at that liquor budget on my P&L, or booze budget. He called booze budget. My bad. This is years ago, a long time ago. And he had just sent me his financials to just talk through on, potentially working with us. He just emailed to me, and I usually when I talk those, I don't really have to look at someone's financials. I had them pulled up, but I really didn't go through it in an insane amount of detail because I wasn't trying to consult with just, a month of data that he had sent, or 1 year of data that he had sent. And so I looked on there, and his booze budget and what you would call other operating expenses was monstrous. And I'm like, man, I thought you were joking about that. And no, every Friday, it's a blue collar industry. Every Friday, man, when the crews got back, it was living the La Vida Loca. And he funded. You want to talk about me? I told him, I wonder if that should be under benefits, because he spent it. But yeah, that's the catch-all bucket.
Yeah, there's two things inside this bucket that folks will, when they say, are we spending too much in OPEX? There's two categories that we typically see those excess spends taking place in. So the first one is unnecessary business travel. It is expensive to travel. And I'm all for being a part of professional and industry organizations because it can be just life-changing for you and it can be life-changing for your business. However, you can become a professional at being a part of a professional organization. And if you're not getting reimbursed for travel and you're having twice a month, you're at a meeting somewhere around the world, that's pretty quickly going to add up. So we look at that one. The other one in here, this one's ironic, considering the source. Overly expensive and unnecessary business consulting. That's right. A consultant told you to watch how much you're spending on consulting. If you're getting return on it, if it's making a difference in your business, if it's improving profitability, all those kind of things, hey, keep doing it because you're getting a great return. But it's not uncommon for us to see somebody spending 6 figures on consultants and we go, well, what are you getting? And here's what they typically say. Well, we got a lot the first year. Okay, what's year 4? What are you getting now? Well, we just kind of keep it. No, you've got to make sure that spend's generating a return every year. And many of them can, but in other cases, it kind of comes in with a bang and it just really diminishes over time. So you want to look at that one as well. Those are the 2 big ones. On insurance, that general liability insurance is up about 15 to 20% year over year. You need to make sure your agent's shopping. If they are not shopping, fire them and bring in someone who will. I can't tell you the number of times where someone has gotten the call to where it's like, oh, my insurance is going up 20, 30%. And I asked the question, did they shop it? And they said, no, they just renewed it with the same company. What? I'm looking for the best value out there. You got to go shop it.
Nice.
From that, don't get caught in the weeds. If you save $15 a month on satellite radio, great. But if you're losing $200K a year, you got a long way to go.
That's right. Hey, good stuff. And by the way, just a shameless plug. Brandon said, spending $100K on those consultants, you actually wouldn't spend $100K working with us.
No.
So think about it. Well, no, not even close.
Yeah. Last chance. So podcasters being released the first week of August. This is your last chance to enter to win the Simple Start session free of charge. All you have to do is go to the Simple Numbers LinkedIn page and message us Simple Start. And we're going to do a drawing beginning of next week, may even announce it on the podcast.
Oh.
But this is your last chance. So go to the Simple Numbers LinkedIn page, message us Simple Start. You'll be entered into that drawing.
Hey, are we going to pick it from a hat?
We should.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to do it, right?
Well, that's the standard,
It's got to be a hat. It's got to be a hat.
We need a simple numbers. I got a simple numbers hat. Let's think it out with simple numbers hat.
There we go. Perfect. Let's do it. Awesome. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us once again. We appreciate you. We'll be back next week, the week of the 11th, August 11th, to talk some more stuff. We got a whole week to figure it out. So we'll see you then.
Later.
If you want to know more about driving sustainable profitability for your business or are interested in learning more about CRI Simple Numbers, please visit our website at simplenumberscri.com. Thanks for listening to this episode of Profitability Playbook, the Simple Numbers Podcast. You can subscribe to Profitability Playbook on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review. This podcast is brought to you by CRI Simple Numbers LLC, a division of CRI Capital Group LLC, and a subsidiary of CRI Advisors LLC. CRI is the trusted brand under which Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC, the CPA firm, and CRI Advisors LLC, along with its subsidiaries, deliver professional services. Please note, Carr, Riggs & Ingram LLC is a licensed independent CPA firm offering attest services, whereas CRI Advisors LLC and its subsidiaries specialize in providing tax and business consulting services. These entities operate within an alternative practice structure as defined by the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct and comply fully with applicable laws, regulations, and professional standards. Ready to simplify your business finances and drive growth? Explore valuable resources, books, and tools designed for entrepreneurs and small businesses at simplenumberscri.com.